You do it every single time you take a bath, wash the dishes, or spend too long in a swimming pool. Your fingers get all pruny and wrinkled, and you have probably been told the same explanation your entire life. Your skin absorbs water, it swells up, and that is what causes the wrinkles. Sounds perfectly logical. At least, that's what everyone thought. Because the real reason your fingers wrinkle in water has nothing to do with absorption. And honestly, the actual explanation is way more interesting. How does something this basic, something literally every human experiences, stay misunderstood for over 100 years? That is where this gets fun. The version you probably learned goes something like this. Your skin has an outer layer called the stratum corneum. It is made of dead skin cells packed with a protein called keratin. When you soak your hands in water, that outer layer absorbs moisture and swells. But the layers underneath do not swell. So the surface buckles and folds, kind of like a bedsheet that is too big for the mattress. Think of it like a sponge sitting on a table. The sponge expands when it gets wet, but the table stays the same size. The sponge has nowhere to go but up and sideways. That is basically how scientists explained finger wrinkling for more than a century. Passive, mechanical, simple. And it makes enough sense that nobody really pushed back on it. Your skin gets wet, it puffs up, wrinkles happen. Case closed. Except it was not closed. Not even a little. This is where the story takes a turn nobody expected. Because surgeons had been noticing something strange for decades, and almost nobody was paying attention. Going all the way back to the 1930s, doctors working with patients who had nerve damage in their hands started documenting a curious detail. When those patients soaked their hands in water, their fingers did not wrinkle at all. The skin stayed perfectly smooth. Now, think about what that means for a second. If wrinkling were just water passively seeping into your skin like a sponge, it should not matter whether your nerves are working or not. Water does not care about your nervous system. It just soaks in. But the wrinkling was not happening in patients with severed nerves. That is a pretty big clue that the whole sponge explanation has a problem. It took until 2011 for someone to really run with this. A neuroscientist named Mark Changizi, working at a lab called 2AI Labs in Boise, Idaho, published a study that reframed the entire question. Changizi did not just ask why fingers wrinkle, he asked what the wrinkles look like. And what he found was genuinely surprising. The wrinkle patterns on pruny fingers are not random. They follow a very specific layout. Channels branch out from the tips of your fingers in a network designed to move water away from the contact surface. If you look at the pattern from above, it looks almost identical to the drainage channels carved into rain tires. Your body is not passively swelling. Your nervous system is actively crinkling your skin to create a better grip surface for wet conditions. The wrinkles are drainage channels, engineered by your own biology to help you hold on to things when everything around you is slippery. I mean, think about that for a second. Your fingers have built-in rain treads. And this is not just a clever theory. Changizi pointed out that the wrinkle pattern is mathematically consistent with optimal water drainage. The channels always point away from the high points of your fingertips, funneling water outward. It is not random folding, it is structured. Pay attention to this next detail because it explains everything. If this grip theory is real, then wrinkled fingers should actually perform better at grabbing wet objects compared to smooth, dry fingers. And in 2013, a team at Newcastle University in England designed an experiment to test exactly that. They had participants pick up wet marbles and move them through a small opening, once with normal dry fingers and once with fingers that had been soaked in warm water for 30 minutes. The results showed that the wrinkled fingers were significantly faster at handling the wet marbles. Dry objects showed no difference either way, which is exactly what you would predict if the wrinkles are specifically designed for wet grip. So the picture is looking pretty solid at this point. Your nerves trigger the wrinkling. The wrinkles follow drainage patterns, and those patterns measurably improve your grip on wet stuff. And somehow, it gets worse. For the theory, at least. Because in 2014, a team of researchers in Germany ran their own version of the experiment. Same basic setup. Wet objects, wrinkled versus smooth fingers. And they found no statistically significant difference in grip performance. Same question, opposite result. Now, both studies had relatively small sample sizes, which makes it hard to draw firm conclusions either way. The Newcastle team tested 20 people. The German team tested a similar number. That is not nothing, but it is not exactly overwhelming either. And this is where the honest answer gets a little uncomfortable. We still do not fully know why your fingers wrinkle in water. We know the old explanation is wrong. We know the nervous system is involved. We know the wrinkle patterns are not random, but whether those patterns actually provide a meaningful grip advantage is still genuinely debated among scientists. Some researchers argue that the grip benefit exists, but is subtle, and the German study just was not sensitive enough to detect it. Others think the wrinkles might be a leftover trait from our evolutionary past, something that helped our ancestors grip wet stones and slippery roots while foraging near rivers and streams in tropical forests, but that may not offer a measurable advantage in a sterile lab setting with marbles. Most people never heard about this part. The debate is still open, and that is kind of the point. We walk around assuming science has figured out every basic thing about our bodies. But your pruney fingers, something you have experienced thousands of times in your life, are still a genuine mystery. Not the we have no idea kind of mystery. The we overthrew one explanation, built a better one, and then could not agree on whether the new one holds up kind. Your body is doing something deliberate every time you step into a shower. Your nervous system fires a signal that constricts blood vessels in your fingertips, pulling the skin inward and creating those channels. It is active, not passive. And the pattern is too consistent to be random. But the question of why, the evolutionary purpose, the functional payoff, that part is still being argued in journals and labs around the world. Your fingers wrinkle in water, and we are still figuring out the reason. If that does not make you look at your hands a little differently next time you are doing the dishes, nothing will. If you are the kind of person who finds this stuff fascinating, subscribe. We dig into questions like this every week. And if you want another one of those "wait, science does not actually know this" moments, click the video on screen. You will not be disappointed.